"I'm filthy inside and out," she said. But the rancher didn't care. He wanted to help her. The sun was just beginning to climb over the hills, spilling a soft golden light across the wide open fields of the ranch. The air smelled of fresh earth and the faint, sweet scent of hay. Birds sang quietly, as if welcoming the new day, and a gentle breeze rustled through the tall grass. It was a peaceful morning, the kind that promised calm and hard work in equal measure. The rancher, a man in his 50s with rough, sun-baked skin and kind eyes, was already moving about the property. He tended to his animals and inspected the fences, humming a low tune to himself. There was a rhythm to his life here, a steady pattern of care and responsibility that had kept the ranch running for years. Suddenly, movement at the edge of the field caught his eye. A figure was stumbling along the dusty path that led from the nearby road. At first he thought it might be someone lost or hurt. As the figure drew closer, he noticed she was covered in dirt, her clothes tattered and torn, and her hair matted and tangled. She walked as if she were carrying a heavy burden, not just on her body but in her soul. Her face, pale and streaked with grime, reflected exhaustion and fear. The rancher felt a pang of concern. He had seen many people in his life, neighbors, travelers, even strangers who wandered through the area, but something about this woman was different. She didn't look like someone who simply needed directions or water for a short walk. There was a deep sadness in her eyes, a kind of weariness that suggested she had been struggling for a long time. When she finally reached the ranch gate, she stopped and leaned against it, breathing heavily. She seemed wary, almost as if she were ready to run at any moment. The rancher approached slowly, keeping his hands visible and his voice gentle. "Are you all right?" he asked. The woman's eyes flicked to him, and for a moment she didn't respond. Then, in a soft, trembling voice, she said, "I'm filthy, inside and out." She looked down at her hands, ashamed, as if speaking the words aloud made them real. Her voice carried a weight of sorrow and self-loathing that the rancher could feel deep in his chest. He paused for a moment, considering what to say. He could see the layers of dirt and grime on her clothes and skin, yes, but that wasn't what caught his attention most. It was the way she had given up on herself, the way she seemed to believe she didn't deserve help or kindness. In that moment, he made a quiet decision. He wasn't going to turn her away. "Come on in," he said simply. "You look like you could use a drink of water and a place to rest." The woman hesitated, glancing around nervously. "I don't want to bother you," she murmured. I don't deserve it." "You're not a bother," the rancher replied firmly yet kindly. "Everyone needs help sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that." She studied him for a moment, uncertainty written across her face. But something in his calm, patient manner made her pause. Slowly, she pushed the gate open and stepped inside, careful not to touch anything as if she feared contaminating the clean, well-kept space. The rancher guided her toward the porch, where a few chairs sat under the shade of a large oak tree. "Sit for a while," he said. "I'll get you some water." She sank into the chair, her body sagging with relief and exhaustion. The rancher returned moments later with a glass of cool water and handed it to her. She took it hesitantly, her hands trembling, and drank slowly, as if savoring every drop. The sun was now higher in the sky, warming the porch and casting a golden glow over the two of them. The rancher watched her quietly, not pressing her for words, allowing her to drink in peace. After a few moments, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been alone for so long," she said. "Nobody wants me. I've made mistakes. I've done things I can't take back. And I'm just filthy Her voice cracked and tears welled up in her eyes. The rancher nodded slowly, understanding that she needed to be heard more than anything else. "We all have things we wish we could change," he said. "We all make mistakes. That doesn't make you any less worthy of kindness or care. You're here now, and that matters." She looked at him, her eyes searching his for judgment, but finding none. There was only acceptance. She couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her that way, without anger, without disgust, without pity. It was strange, almost unfamiliar, to feel that someone might actually want to help her, even with all her faults. The rancher didn't say anything more at first. He went about his morning chores with a quiet efficiency, giving her space while remaining nearby. She watched him, noticing how he moved with confidence and calm, how he treated the animals and the land with care. There was something steady and grounding about him, something that made the chaos in her mind feel a little less overwhelming. After a while, she finally spoke again, this time with a hint of curiosity. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. He looked at her and smiled gently. "Because I can," he said simply. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because I've been given more than I need. And sometimes that means helping someone else who doesn't have much. You're not asking for much, just a little kindness, and I can give that." She didn't respond immediately. Her mind was racing, filled with doubts and fears that had been with her for years. But somewhere deep inside, a small spark of hope began to flicker. Maybe, just maybe, she could trust this man. Maybe there was a chance for something better. The rancher then brought out a clean towel and handed it to her. "Here," he said. "You look like you could use this." She hesitated, unsure if she should take it. I don't want to bother you with my mess," she said softly. "You're not a mess," he replied firmly. "You're a person, and people need care sometimes." For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to accept help. She took the towel and dried her hands, feeling the warmth and softness against her skin. It was a small gesture, but it carried a message she had almost forgotten, that she mattered, that she could be cared for, and that not everyone would judge her for her past. The morning passed slowly, with the woman sitting quietly on the porch while the rancher worked nearby. The sounds of the ranch, cows lowing in the distance, the soft clatter of tools, the rustling of leaves, filled the air. It was peaceful, steady, and grounding. The woman found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, allowing herself to breathe without fear or shame. By the time the sun was high in the sky, she realized something important. She wasn't alone. Not really. There was someone who saw her, who didn't judge her, who simply offered help because it was the right thing to do. And in that moment, she felt a small glimmer of hope, fragile but real, that maybe, just maybe, she could start to believe in herself again. The rancher noticed the change in her too. He didn't say anything, didn't try to force words or feelings. He simply kept working, keeping the rhythm of the ranch steady, offering care without expectation. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, the woman began to let herself trust him, to let herself hope that there might be a new beginning waiting for her. By the time the afternoon came, she was still sitting on the porch, watching him work with a quiet fascination. She didn't speak much, but she didn't leave either, and that in itself was progress. The first step had been taken, not toward perfection, not toward forgetting the past, but toward allowing herself to be cared for and maybe, eventually, to care for herself again. The rancher didn't rush her, didn't pressure her to explain or justify her life. He simply offered a space of safety, a small oasis of calm and kindness in a world that had often been cruel and unyielding. And for the woman, That was more than she could have hoped for. It was the beginning of something new, a chance to breathe, to rest, and to imagine that perhaps life could be gentler than she had ever believed. The woman spent the rest of that morning quietly on the porch, watching the rancher move about his work with steady, confident motions. He repaired a fence post here, fed a few chickens there, and checked the watering troughs for the cattle. Everything he did seemed purposeful, almost meditative. She couldn't remember the last time she had seen someone take such care in their daily tasks. It felt peaceful, calm, predictable in a way her life had never been. She shifted in her chair, hugging her arms around herself, unsure if she belonged here. Part of her still believed she didn't deserve this kindness, that any moment he would grow tired of her presence and tell her to leave. Yet, something in the rancher's quiet, patient demeanor made her hesitate. He didn't rush her. He didn't ask her for her story. He simply existed as a steady, non-judgmental presence. Eventually, he came over with a bucket of warm water, a bar of soap, and a clean cloth. "If you'd like," he said gently, "you can clean up a little. You don't have to, of course, but it might help you feel better." She looked down at the bucket and then at him, unsure. I don't know if I can," she whispered. I'm not used to being clean."
Not like this.
He smiled softly. "You don't have to be perfect. Just take your time, one step at a time." She studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. She hadn't realized how badly she needed this simple act of care. She had spent so long avoiding mirrors, avoiding people, avoiding herself. Dirt had become a part of her daily life, but it was more than just physical. It was a shield, a way to hide from the world that she felt had already rejected her. The rancher left her to it, giving her privacy while still keeping an eye from a distance. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to wash. The water was warm and soothing, and the simple act of cleaning her hands and face brought tears to her eyes. She realized how tense she had been, how much of herself she had neglected. With each careful wipe, she felt a small layer of the heaviness lift from her shoulders. By the time she was done, she felt different. Not completely, not magically, but enough to notice a small sense of relief. The rancher came back with a clean set of clothes. "Nothing fancy," he said lightly, "but it's something to help you feel a little more comfortable." She hesitated again, staring at the clothes. "I don't deserve this," she murmured. "You do," he said firmly. "Everyone deserves a little comfort and care. You're no exception." Finally, she took the clothes and changed. The simple act of putting on something clean felt revolutionary. She caught a reflection in a window and barely recognized herself. Her face still carried exhaustion, but there was something lighter in her eyes, a glimmer that hadn't been there before. She felt vulnerable, yes, but also alive. Once she was dressed, the rancher suggested she try helping with small chores. "If you'd like," he said, "you can feed the chickens. It's simple work, and it might be good to get your hands moving. No pressure, though. Only if you want." She looked at the chickens, their feathers bright and clean, clucking softly as they pecked at the ground. She felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. It had been so long since she had done anything useful, anything that wasn't just surviving or hiding, but the rancher's calm encouragement gave her courage. Slowly, she bent down and began scattering feed. The chickens rushed over, pecking happily at the grain. She laughed quietly, surprised at the sound of her own voice, and for a moment, she almost forgot her worries. The rancher watched her, smiling silently. "See?" he said after a while. "Nothing to it. You're doing just fine." She smiled shyly, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know I could do this, she admitted. You can, he said simply. Sometimes we forget what we're capable of when we're weighed down by the past. For the rest of the morning, she continued with small chores, bringing water to the animals, sweeping the porch, and even helping with some simple repairs. She was clumsy at first, unsure of herself, but the rancher's steady guidance made her feel capable. Every small task she completed built a little confidence inside her. It was as if each action, no matter how ordinary, was helping to wash away the long-held shame she had carried. After the chores, they sat together under the shade of the oak tree. The rancher brought a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and fruit. They ate in silence at first, the sounds of the ranch filling the space between them. She felt nervous, unsure if she should speak, afraid of saying something wrong. But after a few moments, she found herself opening up. I've been alone for a long time, she said quietly. I didn't trust anyone. People, they hurt you, and then you realize you can't rely on anyone. I started thinking I didn't deserve help, or love, or kindness. The rancher listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. It's hard to feel safe when you've been hurt, he said gently. But you're here now, and that's what matters. The past can teach us, but it doesn't have to define us. She looked at him, searching his face. But what if I fail again?
What if I mess up and lose this too? Then we try again, he said simply. Life isn't about being perfect.
It's about taking steps forward, even when we're afraid. And you've already taken the first step by being here. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It was strange. She had never experienced anyone talking to her like this. No anger, no judgment, no rushing, just patience, understanding, and a quiet confidence that things could get better. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Not loud or overwhelming, but small and steady, like the warmth of the sun on her skin. The afternoon passed slowly, filled with simple tasks and quiet conversation. She learned to feed the goats, collect eggs from the chicken coop, and even help with some basic gardening. Each task, no matter how small, reminded her that she was capable, that she had value, that she could matter. At one point, she stopped to rest in the shade, wiping her brow and smiling quietly to herself. She realized that she had forgotten what it felt like to feel useful, to have a place where she belonged, even if just for a little while. And with that realization came something even more powerful, a desire to keep going, to continue learning, to continue healing. The rancher noticed the change too. He didn't comment directly, but he offered small encouragements. Good job. That looks great. You're doing fine. All gentle reminders that she was capable and valued. And slowly, the woman began to believe it. Slowly, she began to believe in herself again. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, the woman sat with the rancher and watched the cattle grazing. She felt tired, yes, but also alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Her body and mind were exhausted from the day's work, but there was a quiet joy that came from accomplishment and care. She realized that even though she had spent so much of her life thinking she was unworthy, she had finally begun to take the first steps toward a new life. And in that moment, she understood something important. It wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending the hardships didn't exist. It was about choosing to move forward despite them, about letting someone care for you even when you thought you didn't deserve it, about finding small moments of trust and hope in a world that had often seemed dark and unforgiving. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. And that hope, fragile but real, was more powerful than she had expected. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the hills, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges. The woman woke early, stirred by the quiet sounds of the ranch, the lowing of the cattle, the rustle of the grass in the gentle breeze, and the distant call of a bird. She stretched, feeling the unfamiliar ache of muscles that were being used for the first time in a long while. Her body reminded her that yesterday had been a day of work, but the ache was different. It was satisfying, proof that she had accomplished something. She stepped outside, brushing the last traces of sleep from her eyes, and saw the rancher already at work. He was repairing a fence near the far field, his movements steady and precise. When he noticed her, he waved with a small smile. "Good morning," he called out. "Ready for another day?" She nodded slowly, her stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She wasn't sure what the day would hold, but she knew that she wanted to try. Yesterday had been the first day she had felt even a little like herself again, and she didn't want to lose that feeling. After breakfast, they began their usual morning chores. She carried water to the animals, helped gather eggs, and even assisted in feeding the goats. Each small task seemed to chip away at the weight she had carried for so long. The shame, the fear, the belief that she was worthless. The rancher offered encouragement here and there, his quiet words giving her confidence. "You're doing well," he would say. "Just keep going." Eventually, they took a break under the shade of the oak tree. The woman sat quietly, watching the rancher as he sipped his coffee. He looked peaceful, content with his life here on the ranch, yet there was a kindness in his eyes that drew her in. She had spent so long avoiding people, assuming that no one could understand her pain. But this man, this stranger, was patient, steady, and kind. He listened without judgment, and that was something she had never truly experienced. For the first time, she felt a desire to speak about herself, not just the small details of her daily life, but the things she had buried deep inside for years. She took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting in her lap, and began to speak. I haven't had an easy life," she said quietly. "I've made mistakes. People I trusted, they hurt me. And somewhere along the way, I started to believe that I didn't deserve anything good. I stopped caring about myself, stopped trying to be clean, stopped trying at all." The rancher listened silently, nodding slightly. He didn't interrupt or rush her. He simply offered her his attention, and that was enough. "It got to a point," she continued, "where I thought the only way to survive was to hide. To stay dirty in a way, because then no one would expect anything from me. No one would be disappointed. And I believed it for so long that I was just broken." She looked down at her hands, wringing them nervously. Her voice trembled, but she continued, needing to release the words that had been trapped inside her for years. "I never thought anyone would want to help me. I never thought anyone would care. And I still don't know if I deserve it." The rancher leaned back slightly, taking a moment before he spoke. "I can't change the past," he said gently. "I can't undo what you've been through. But what I can do is be here with you now. I can offer help, and I can listen. That doesn't mean you're perfect, or that your past doesn't matter. It just means that right now, you're allowed to be cared for." She looked up at him, surprised at the calm certainty in his voice. It was strange to hear someone say that she was allowed to be cared for. She had spent so many years believing that no one would care, that she was unworthy, but here he was, giving her permission to exist, to be herself, to heal. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, and she blinked quickly to hold them back. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to trust anyone anymore, and I don't know if I can ever really believe that someone cares. You don't have to know right now, he said. You just have to take one step, one small step. That's how trust grows, slowly, over time. Not by rushing or forcing, but by allowing yourself to be present and open, just a little at a time. She considered his words, feeling the truth in them. She had spent so long running, hiding, and avoiding, but maybe the way forward wasn't about grand gestures or instant changes. Maybe it was about small steps, feeding a chicken, carrying water, letting someone offer a towel, and sitting quietly under a tree. For the rest of the morning, they continued working together. She swept the porch, collected eggs, and helped feed the animals, each task building a small confidence inside her. With every movement, she felt a little stronger, a little braver, a little more alive. The rancher offered guidance where needed, but mostly he watched, letting her find her own rhythm and discover her own strength. By midday, the woman felt exhausted, but in a different way than she had felt in years. This was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from using her body, accomplishing tasks, and connecting with another human being. She sat on the porch steps, wiping sweat from her brow and smiling quietly to herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt proud of herself. After lunch, she found the courage to ask the rancher a question that had been on her mind since she arrived. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Why do you care about someone like me?" He smiled, a small, understanding smile. "Because everyone deserves care. Everyone deserves a chance to feel safe and valued. It doesn't matter where you've been or what you've done. You're here now, and that's enough." She nodded slowly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. His words weren't just kindness. They were truth, and for the first time in years, she wanted to believe them. Over the next few hours, she began to share more about her past. She spoke of her childhood, of times when she felt invisible and alone. She spoke of mistakes she had made, and of people she had trusted who had let her down. She spoke of the shame that had grown inside her, convincing her that she was unworthy of love or care. The rancher listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. He simply nodded, offering quiet acknowledgement and understanding. "It's okay to feel what you feel," he said gently. "Your experiences don't make you bad. They make you human, and you're more than your past." As the afternoon sunlight grew warmer, she found herself feeling lighter. Sharing her story had been difficult, yes, but also liberating. For the first time, she felt the burden of shame and fear lift, even if only slightly. She realized that talking about her struggles didn't make her weak. It made her brave. By evening, the woman and the rancher sat together on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the hills. The sky was painted with deep oranges and purples, and a cool breeze drifted across the fields. She felt a quiet sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't known for years. The rancher didn't speak much, but his presence alone was comforting, a reminder that she was not alone. For the first time, she began to imagine a future where she could trust again, where she could feel worthy of kindness, where she could take steps forward without fear. It wasn't a complete transformation. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but it was a start, a real, tangible start. That night, as she lay in the small guest room the rancher had prepared for her, she reflected on the day. She thought about the chores she had accomplished, the courage it had taken to share her story, and the simple kindness of a stranger who had chosen to care for her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. She realized that healing was not about forgetting the past or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about accepting help, allowing oneself to be seen, and taking small steps toward a better life. And in that quiet moment, she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. Trust that she could take one step at a time. Trust that she could be cared for. Trust that maybe, just maybe, life could be gentler than she had believed. And for the first time, she believed it might be possible. The next morning, the woman woke with a sense of quiet anticipation. The ache in her muscles reminded her that her body was adjusting to real work, and oddly enough, she welcomed it. She rose slowly and looked out the window. The ranch was bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. The birds chirped happily, and the breeze carried the faint scent of hay and earth. It all felt alive, welcoming, and for the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. The rancher was already outside, feeding the animals and moving about with calm efficiency. When he noticed her at the window, he gave a small wave. "Morning," he called. "Ready to start the day?" She nodded, feeling a little nervous but also determined. Yesterday had been a breakthrough, but she knew that healing wasn't just a single step. It was a journey, one she would have to keep walking. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, and stepped outside. Their morning began with routine chores. She fetched water for the animals, fed the goats and chickens, and carried hay for the cattle. Each task was simple, yet each one mattered. She began to notice how much effort the rancher put into every detail. The care he gave to each animal, the patience in fixing fences, the quiet way he tended to the land. Watching him, she realized that he treated every small task with respect, and that inspired her to do the same. After a while, he suggested she try something new, mending a small fence that had been broken in a storm. She hesitated. "I've never done this before," she admitted, feeling a twinge of fear. "You don't need experience," he said kindly. "I'll show you, and you can learn at your own pace. Mistakes are okay. They help you learn." She nodded and followed him to the fence. He handed her a hammer and some nails, demonstrating carefully how to fix the broken plank. At first, her movements were awkward, her hands unsure. She hit a nail crookedly, and it bent under the pressure. She wanted to give up, embarrassed. The rancher noticed immediately and said gently, "It's okay. Try again. Take your time. You'll get it." She took a deep breath, adjusted her stance, and tried once more. This time, the nail went in straight. She felt a small surge of pride and smiled at him. "I did it," she whispered, almost in disbelief. "You did?" he said, smiling back. "See? One step at a time." As the morning passed, she continued with more tasks she had never imagined doing. She learned how to fix a water trough, how to safely gather eggs from the coop, and even how to identify small problems in the barn before they became bigger ones. Each task, no matter how minor, gave her a sense of accomplishment. She began to see herself not as someone broken or useless, but as someone capable of learning, of contributing, of being part of something. By midday, the sun was high and warm, and they took a break under the large oak tree. The woman sat quietly, letting the breeze wash over her. She felt tired, but in a satisfying way, the kind of tired that comes after doing meaningful work. She looked at the rancher, who was sipping his coffee and watching the animals with a peaceful expression. For a moment, she wondered if he ever worried about her, if he ever judged her. But the truth was clear in his calm demeanor. He didn't. She took a deep breath and spoke softly. "I didn't know I could do things like this," she admitted. "I always thought I would fail, or make a mess. But today, I feel capable. Like I can do more than I thought." The rancher nodded, a warm smile on his face.
You can. You're stronger than you realize.
All it takes is the courage to try, and you've already done that. Her heart swelled with an emotion she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not pride in the way she had once imagined, flaunting success or showing off, but a quiet, steady pride in simply being able to do something well. It was empowering, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of belonging. She belonged here, in this place of calm and care, even if only for now. After lunch, the rancher suggested they work on the garden together. She hesitated, unsure if she could handle the work, but agreed. The garden was overgrown, with weeds choking some of the plants. They worked side by side, pulling weeds, turning soil, and planting new seeds. As they worked, the rancher shared small bits of advice, not in a bossy way, but in a teaching manner that encouraged her to think, observe, and learn. You see this plant? He asked, pointing to a small tomato plant. It's fragile at first, but with care, it will grow strong. You have to water it just right and give it attention. People are the same way. With care, patience, and attention, you can grow too.
She paused, absorbing his words.
They were simple, but they resonated deeply. For so long she had felt fragile and weak, but hearing it put into words, that she could grow, that she could heal, gave her hope. She smiled quietly, thinking about the small seeds they had planted and how, in time, they would grow into something strong and beautiful. As the afternoon sun began to lower, she and the rancher returned to the barn. He asked if she wanted to try feeding the horses, something she had been nervous about before. Horses were large, strong, and unpredictable, but she agreed. She approached the first horse slowly, speaking softly to it as the rancher had taught her. The animal turned its head toward her, sniffed her hand, and then allowed her to feed it. Her heart raced with excitement. She had done it. She had faced her fear and succeeded. "Good job," the rancher said, his voice warm and encouraging. "See? You're capable of more than you think." She couldn't help but smile. Each small victory built her confidence, teaching her that mistakes didn't define her, and that her past didn't have to limit her future. She began to feel a sense of independence she had not known for years, a quiet assurance that she could do things for herself and still accept help when needed. As the day came to an end, they sat together on the porch, the sky painted with shades of orange and pink. She watched the animals settle for the evening, the air filled with a peaceful calm she hadn't experienced in years. She felt tired, yes, but fulfilled. She realized that her life didn't have to be filled with shame, fear, and loneliness. It could be different. It could be simple, steady, and full of small moments of joy and achievement. The rancher didn't speak much, but he didn't have to. His quiet presence was reassuring, a reminder that someone cared without judgment or expectation. And slowly, the woman began to realize something important. She could care for herself too. She didn't have to rely on others entirely, but accepting kindness didn't make her weak. It made her human. That night she prepared to sleep in the small room the rancher had set up for her. She reflected on the day, the small tasks she had completed, the moments of courage, the new skills she had learned, and the trust that was slowly building between her and the rancher. She felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, a warmth that came not from material things, but from the knowledge that she was capable, valued, and slowly learning to believe in herself again. She realized that healing was not about erasing the past or pretending pain didn't exist. It was about taking steps forward, one small action at a time. It was about learning to trust again, about accepting care, about finding strength in everyday moments. And for the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope that was steady, real, and powerful. As she closed her eyes, she thought about the garden they had worked in, the fence she had repaired, and the horse she had fed. Each small accomplishment felt symbolic, a reminder that growth, care, and patience could lead to something meaningful. She knew there would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and fear, but she also knew that she had taken real steps toward a better life, steps she had once thought were impossible. And as sleep came over her, she allowed herself to dream of a future where she could continue to grow, to heal, and to belong. The morning sun rose over the ranch, spilling a warm glow across the fields. The woman woke slowly, stretching her arms and feeling the familiar ache in her muscles. This time, however, it didn't feel unpleasant. It was a reminder that her body was strong, that she could work, move, and care for herself. She rose quietly and looked out the window, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't known in years. The ranch was alive with the soft sounds of the morning, the gentle lowing of cows, the cooing of birds, and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. The rancher was already outside, checking the fences near the cattle field. When he noticed her, he waved and called out, "Morning! Ready to start another day?" She nodded, smiling softly. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years, and she realized that she actually looked forward to these mornings. The chores, the animals, the rhythm of the ranch, it had all become a source of comfort and stability. She had begun to see that life could be steady, predictable, and yet full of small joys. Their morning began as usual. She carried water to the animals, fed the chickens, and helped gather hay for the cattle. Each task felt familiar now, and she moved with confidence. The rancher watched her, offering guidance when needed, but mostly letting her discover her own abilities. He had taught her patience, care, and attention to detail, and she had learned quickly, gaining pride in the work she accomplished. After finishing the morning chores, the rancher suggested they go to the garden. "It's ready for planting new seeds," he said. "Would you like to help?" She nodded eagerly. Gardening had become one of her favorite tasks. It was peaceful, steady, and offered a visible reward for their work. She and the rancher moved together among the rows of soil, planting seeds carefully and covering them with earth. Each small seed represented a beginning, and as she worked, she thought about her own life. Like the seeds, she too was starting fresh, slowly growing stronger and more capable. While they worked, she spoke quietly. "I never thought I would feel like this," she admitted. "I never imagined I could be happy, or proud, or useful. But now I feel like maybe I can." The rancher nodded, smiling gently. "That's the important part," he said. "Believing in yourself, even when it's hard. One step at a time, and soon you'll see how far you've come." As the morning faded into afternoon, they finished planting and sat together under the oak tree, enjoying a simple lunch. The woman felt content, the simple meal and the quiet companionship bringing her more happiness than she had expected. She realized that she had begun to enjoy the presence of another person, not out of fear or dependence, but because of trust and understanding. She was learning that it was okay to rely on others sometimes, and that doing so didn't make her weak. After lunch, the rancher suggested they clean one of the barns together. The task seemed large at first, but they broke it into smaller steps, tackling one section at a time. She lifted, swept, and organized alongside him, and with each completed section, she felt a growing sense of accomplishment. By the end of the afternoon, the barn was neat, tidy, and well-maintained. She stepped back and admired their work, a wide smile spreading across her face. "You did this," the rancher said warmly. Look at it. You made a real difference here today. She felt a swell of pride. For so long she had believed that she was incapable of anything meaningful, that she would always be a burden. But here she was, seeing tangible results from her own effort, realizing that she was not only capable, but valuable. Later in the evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, she helped feed the horses. She approached each one confidently, speaking softly, patting their necks and offering them feed. One of the horses nudged her gently, as if acknowledging her care, and she laughed quietly, feeling a connection she had never experienced before. It was a small moment, but it symbolized something much larger. She was learning to trust herself and the world around her. After all the chores were done, she and the rancher sat together on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the hills. The sky was painted in deep shades of orange and purple, and the breeze was cool and comforting. She felt tired but deeply fulfilled, a quiet sense of contentment settling over her. "I never thought I would feel this way," she said softly. "I thought life would always be hard, and that I would always feel unworthy. But now I see that it can be different, that I can be different." The rancher nodded, his eyes kind and steady. "You've taken the steps to change your life," he said. "You've worked hard, faced your fears, and allowed yourself to heal. That's what makes the difference. The rest will come with time." She leaned back in her chair, letting the words sink in. She thought about the journey she had taken, from a life of isolation, shame, and self-doubt, to this place of trust, care, and small victories. She had learned that healing was not about forgetting the past, but about taking small, deliberate steps forward. Each task she completed, each act of courage, each moment of trust had brought her closer to herself. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, she reflected on the changes within her. She no longer saw herself as filthy inside and out. That phrase, once so heavy and true to her life, no longer defined her. She had learned to care for herself, to accept care from others, and to take pride in her efforts. She had learned that her past did not determine her future, and that she had the power to create a new path for herself. The rancher noticed the thoughtful expression on her face. "You've come a long way," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you." She looked at him, feeling gratitude and warmth welling up inside her. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. For believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." He smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "Everyone deserves someone to believe in them," he said. "And now you can start believing in yourself too." That night, as she lay in the small room the rancher had prepared for her, she felt a deep sense of peace. She thought about the day, the work, the laughter, the quiet conversations, and the small victories. Each experience had strengthened her, teaching her patience, courage, and the value of trust. She realized that healing was not a single moment, but a collection of moments, each one building on the other, guiding her toward a better life. She closed her eyes, feeling the comfort of a safe space for the first time in years. She allowed herself to imagine a future filled with growth, hope, and belonging, a future where she could continue to work, learn, and live with pride, a future where she could trust herself and others, knowing that she was capable, valued, and loved in her own quiet way. As sleep took her, she dreamed of the ranch, the golden fields, the animals, and the steady, kind presence of the rancher. She saw herself walking confidently through the fields, caring for the land and animals, smiling freely without fear or shame. It was a dream of hope, of new beginnings, and of the life she had worked so hard to reclaim. The woman's transformation was not sudden, but it was real. She had come to understand that true change comes from consistent effort, trust, and acceptance. She had learned to forgive herself for past mistakes, to embrace her abilities, and to accept kindness without fear. And through it all, the rancher had shown her that compassion and patience could light the path toward a new life. In the weeks that followed, she continued to grow. She worked on the ranch daily, learning more about caring for the animals, tending the garden, and maintaining the land. She became more confident, more independent, and more connected to the world around her. Each day she added new skills and new experiences to her life, building a foundation of strength and resilience that could carry her forward. And while the past would always be a part of her story, it no longer defined her. She had emerged from her struggles, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate toward herself and others. She had discovered that healing was possible, that hope could flourish even in difficult circumstances, and that small steps taken consistently could lead to profound transformation. The rancher continued to guide her, but now she also guided herself. She recognized her own growth and took pride in it, knowing that her life was no longer defined by shame or fear, but by courage, care, and determination. And as she looked out over the fields at sunset, she knew that she had found not only a place to belong, but also the strength to continue growing, healing, and living. For the first time in a long time, she felt whole, and that wholeness, fragile yet steady, filled her with a quiet joy that would carry her into the future.